Hey everybody, we are back. The party rages on. Sorry, I'll use a party reference every single time. I know you're all filtering into the room in just a few minutes. And Mary Gutwein will join me here on stage. So if my team can make sure that Mary joins me back here with her slides ready to go, we will begin. This is another one that excites me. It's using xAPI in a software simulation. We had the leadership example before. And Mary's going to take a few minutes on the front end and talk about herself and, of course, the work she's done over the next 45 minutes. What we'll do, of course, Mary will be fielding questions throughout. So if you have those, please use the chat. Please use the key QA, and I am going to be available kind of monitoring that too. So Mary, if anything pops up that you missed, I'll be sure to share that with you. So remember, afterwards, Mary will have a little bit of time. She'll join in the lounge. So if you have any lingering questions, want to meet Mary in person there and talk a little bit more about her work, that would be the space to do it. So I'm going to turn things over to Mary. So Mary, you can unmute, turn your camera on, and we will get going. Or will we? Karen or Nadine, is there any assistance you can give Mary to let her be able to be seen and heard?
She is on stage, Mark.
Yeah, she's muted and the camera's off. So Mary, if you can hear me, if that's something you can do, I cannot do it for you.
No, I can't unmute her or turn her camera on, unfortunately. She has to do it herself.
Oh.
All right.
Oh,
What about
there
now?
She is. Okay.
Hi.
hey, all right. I'm
We're
going to get
back.
out of your way. You rock and roll. We'll see you a little bit.
All right. Okay, so I think you're seeing my, okay. All right, well, thank you so much for that introduction. I am here to talk to you about my experience with xAPI in a software simulation. So here's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to introduce myself, introduce my company, the company I work for, and tell you how I got into xAPI. I'll talk about the project that we're using as a pilot and what that's all about. Talk about our data strategy, and then I'm going to show you in Storyline what we did and an example of the data that we're hoping to generate, and then tell you about what's next after the pilot. So first, a little bit about me. I'm Mary Gutwein. I'm a senior learning design professional at Humana. Humana is a healthcare company. I'll get to that in a minute. But I have been with Humana for 27 years. 20 of those years I've been developing e-learning, which means I started when I was 12. No, not really, but for 20 of those years, I've been building e-learning using a variety of tools. If you remember Toolbook, that's where I started. Our department currently uses the Articulate 360 Suite as our primary development tool. I am a non-coder, so this getting into xAPI has been a real experience that way. And I live in St. Petersburg, Florida, where it is sunny and warm. Humana is a healthcare company. We're based out of Louisville, Kentucky. And if you know anything about Louisville, Kentucky, you know that this next week is Derby Week, which is a big deal. There are about 90,000 associates at Humana. 50 business areas that have at least one learning professional, and then a learning consortium that connects all the learning professionals. Our primary business is Medicare. We also have Medicaid contracts. We have home health, pharmacy, vision, all sorts of products like that. And our work, Learning Solutions, supports enterprise operations enablement, which is basically call center. Medicare call center, Medicaid call center, LINET, all sorts of different work that way, claims. So we're the people that teach the people how to answer the phone calls, in other words. So how I got into xAPI. In November of 2021, Storyline came out with the elapsed time variable. And if you think about call centers, time is very important. One of their major metrics is average handle time, AHT. And so this really intrigued me. And so I started playing with it. And I realized that SCORM wasn't going to work. And so I posted something in the eLearning Heroes site. And I was like, well, how do I do this? How do I get this elapsed time variable to work? And they said, you need to send over an xAPI statement. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. So I started researching xAPI and I realized, man, this is big. This is, we can do a lot with this. So in January of 2022, I joined the xAPI cohort, and that's one reason why I'm here. And I learned an absolute ton of information about xAPI. I was a lurker. I didn't exactly participate in any projects, and just soaked in all the information. Also, in January 22, I formed an xAPI interest group with learning professionals all across the enterprise. And together we explored how xAPI works and how it works in the context of Humana. So here are some of the things that we took away. And what we learned. We learned how to program custom xAPI statements in Storyline, including using the variables, including using not the variables that I wanted to use, which were the elapsed time variables. We also learned that about our internal learner record store, Cornerstone On Demand. And those of you who use Cornerstone, the xAPI statement viewer is something that needs to be turned on. It's not automatically turned on when you first get the learning management system. You have to ask your admin to ask CSOD to turn them on. And so we were exploring that, and we figured out, we can send data to the LRS, okay? We also learned more about the xAPI statement viewer and what it could do and how to filter and all those, because we were like, well, how are we going to separate all of our data, right? Well, you got to filter. And a word about the xAPI statement viewer. There are a couple of risks in using it in that it doesn't recognize all the verbs. There's a certain subset of verbs that CSOD will recognize. And I was able to work around that in my development with this pilot. But it's also not very stable because right now it's down and my training launches on June 10th and I'm going, please fix it, right? So there are some risks in using it. And then the last thing we learned is how to send an xAPI statement to an external LRS. So once I had all this learning under my belt, I shared with my team, and at the time, my team was the eLearning Center of Excellence for Learning Solutions. And what we were responsible for is we were farmed out to different teams that were working on big e-learning projects. And we were also in charge of e-learning quality. And we would do reviews on all the e-learning that came through, and we set the standards and all that. So I shared it with my team and they were excited about it. And then in November of 2022, I shared with leadership. And at that point, the most often used phrase that I heard was game changer. Because up until this point, we've only been able to provide SCORM data to our customers, which is operations, right? And so they were really excited. And so what became of that is it's now an official project, the xAPI implementation project, and I'm leading that. So exciting times. And another thing we were able to do is one of our assessment tools, there was a gap in time from when the training began to when this assessment tool was going to be available. And so we were able to use the xAPI to get some of the same data that that assessment tool would have given. Very small, but we did it. Okay, so the pilot project is the CRM Lightning enhancement. CRM Service is a Salesforce tool that our Medicare calls advocates, or all of our advocates, use to record the calls, to tell what type of call it is, what the caller's concern is, document the call, all of that. Well, this tool, we've used it for about the last 5 or 6 years, and it's getting a major interface update. So things are going to move around. And so the audience is, of course, the Medicare calls advocates. And the main thing we are trying to do with this tool is to get everybody to a comfort level with the new system. There's a major difference in the screens. Things have moved around a lot, but in the end, it's going to be a much more concise screen, a much better experience for the advocates, and which will help them to help the members more efficiently. So to give you an example of what this is like, the CRM Classic search screen, this is what they see now. You can see how it's all spread out. The bottom part here is the interaction log. And this is what it's going to look like for CRM Lightning. So you can see just by this one screen example, it's going to be a lot different. So what the project is I developed the training with a team of folks. We developed training for the existing associate experience. So what that looks like is there are 3 sections of the training, and in each section there will be 3 types of learning. The first learning that they're going to see is the guided UI tours, where they'll get an overview of what the screens look like. And things like page layouts, where things are, so they know where to go. For example, they get guidance alerts, give guidance alerts to the members, and the icon for that is all over the place, moving all over the place. So they'll be able to get their feet wet. After they complete the guided tour, there'll be 3 to 5 micro simulations where learners will practice short simulations based on tasks, like ordering an ID card is a task. And so, excuse me. So they'll go through these micro simulations. And the last thing that they'll do is have a longer simulation that puts some of the micro simulations together and puts it in the context of a call. So someone will call in, and they'll walk through the screens that they need to go to get to assist the member. So on the first 2, we'll use SCORM to track the learning, But in the apply mode, this is where we're piloting xAPI. So we'll be able to track accuracy and speed and provide that data. And we are very fortunate in that we have a whole BI team that's assisting us with this. They're working on developing dashboards and that type of thing. So our data strategy, this is important. As we were developing this learning, there were two questions that we asked. What do we want to know about the learner experience? And what does operations want to know about the learner experience? So as we were developing, we aligned on the verbs, and we came up with our data strategy by asking the questions on the right. And hopefully those questions can be answered by using the verbs that we did. Like, did the learner click correctly? How long did it take for the learner to click correctly? And that is a key metric for me. Did they complete the module? And then we also have a confidence question at the end. How confident are you in what you learned in this simulation? In my work, I use hints quite frequently. We can tell with xAPI if they've used a hint. We're able to track scores on a task level and overall, and how long did the learner spend in this module. So we'll be able to get and evaluate all of that data. So at this point, I think I'm taking you out of my presentation for a minute. Are there any questions in the chat, Mark? I'm going to take that as a no. Okay, so I'm going to just give you a preview of this. And these are just random slides that I put together, and I hope that it will preview. I've been having trouble with the preview lately. And it's not going to work. Let me try this again. There we go. It's a little bit further. Okay, so the advocate is going to answer the call, and I have a variable in here that I didn't populate. And usually there'll be a IVR that will ask them what they're calling about, and so they know that this particular caller is wanting an address change. So gets the address change. They're given instructions. They'll click with and about. They'll click the policy number, and then they'll click Quick Start to document the call. And I assure you that in the real life training, there are more realistic names than first name and last name. But we wanted to mask everything since this was public. So in this instance, they'll enter the member's name. And then they'll go here. And now this is what happens at the end. They're either confident or not confident. I'm going to say that I'm confident. And then I'll say because training. And then they'll get their score. So here we have the threshold of 100 seconds, and I did it in 82.19. And the messages down here are going to they're going to correlate to the time, the confidence, and the score. If they got below 85%, they'll have to go through it again. So that is the project. And here, I put this in our pilot site because the xAPI statement viewer does work in the pilot site. And this gives you some of the indication of what type of data we'll get. So they clicked on the MA policy, I did that in 4.1 seconds. Quick start, 3.03 seconds. And then I also had the score for the section and the time for the section, and also for the entire module. There'll be probably 3 or 4 different tasks that they'll complete. And so each one of those tasks will have a score and a time. Okay. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. So I did have a couple of lessons learned in my development. And the first is that elapsed time variables are cumulative. And what that means is if you allow someone to take the module more than once, the time will add if they repeat on the same slide. So like they'll go back to slide 1 and they did the first slide in 10 seconds, and then it will add however long they spent on it again. And so you don't really get accurate time results with elapsed time variables if you do it this way. The way I got around it is I included 3 instances of the same simulation in one learning object. So they'll have at least 3 opportunities to take this scored simulation. The second lesson learned is about scored hotspots. And I don't know if this is a storyline issue or a statement viewer issue or a Mary issue. But if you use the interacted verb and add a scored hotspot, the xAPI statement will not record. And I tried everything. I tried the order of the triggers. I tried everything I could possibly think of to get it to work. And I even posted on eLearning Heroes and didn't get much response from that. I did get a response from staff, and I'm working through it. So more to come on that. So what are the next steps for what we're doing? The training dates are June 10th from June 10th to July the 31st. And during that time, we'll evaluate the data, the click data and the time to see where the gaps are. And then from that data, we'll develop an implementation plan for the department. So that's where we're at right now. And my thing is over. This is all I have. So what are your questions? Are there any questions out there?
No, Mary, not seeing questions yet. Sometimes people need a little time to formulate them.
Okay.
Oh, there is one. Megan was asking, what's next for your team as you all grow with xAPI?
What's next for our team is that we are we have an implementation team, and we're evaluating how we're going to exactly how we're going to use it. We're specifically going to try to use it in our assessment strategies, and then also see where else we can get xAPI data. That will involve training the other designers on the team. Right now, I'm the only one that can use it really proficiently. There are others on my team that can that are studying xAPI. One of them actually went through this last cohort session. I was really pleased about that. And so I'm just using storyline statements. I don't have any custom JavaScript in it. And yes, based on the data, we will be able to maybe do a second release. The first training is just for Medicare and Medicaid associates, and so there will be other groups that will need the training afterwards, so we can use those lessons learned as we roll this out. I think that the entire training will go into the fall. So so this one for just the Medicare and Medicaid associates is going to be the one we focus on first. Let's see. I don't feel that I missed out by not joining a project when I was in the cohort. I did post in Slack a few times when I had specific questions, so that was really helpful. But the cohort was really instrumental in getting me on my way as far when I did that.
Very good. Let's give a second or two and see if there's any other questions that come in around your project, Mary.
Okay.
And just a reminder for everybody else, we have one more to go at the top of the hour today. So be sure to stick around. And Mary and I talked before. So Mary knows the tables are available when this session closes out, that she actually has a table with her name on it, I was told. So, so you can join her at that table.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it does make it special.
When you first learned about xAPI, did you anticipate resistance from management? Actually, that's a good question. Actually, we were looking for other ways to get data because our operational partners were like, you know, great, they scored 85% on a test. What does that tell us? Mm-hmm. And so it gives us more of an opportunity to xAPI gives us more of an opportunity to demonstrate what a learner knows or does rather than what a learner knows. And mm-hmm. So I knew that it was going to take off once management knew. So I didn't expect that at all.
Yeah, you're very fortunate, I think, too, because it sounded like you had leadership who was like they were hungry for data. And so, mm-hmm. You were able to kind of fill that for them with this versus what I think a lot of people have to do is, kind of bring them along to look at the hard data, mm-hmm. what matters most, for sure. That's a good point. All right. Well, I think, Mary, looks like those might be the questions for now. So what I'm going to do, everybody, is close out this session, and Mary will be able to join at a table shortly, and we will be back at the top of the hour for our final session of this party. So be sure to join us, and I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks.